what do you love about your job?
It's a passion. More than a job, I would say it's a passion. And when you're creating something from a place of love and obsession, it doesn't really feel like a job, at least for me.
No. I think the idea is that it's fun and it is the best job in the world because it's what I've always wanted to do since I was 4, which is, I know, really weird. And then you get to do it every single day and you get to create new things that then people get to experience and live in and touch. And so I think that's really exciting for us.
I'm Sahar Aziz. I'm the creative director at Studio Sera and Homestead, and we're excited to show you around. I love my job.
Hi, I'm Fatma Afzal. I work with Studio Sera. I'm the design director there. And on most days, I love my job.
I'm Ilham Sheikh. You already know me. And on most days, most days I really like my job. So take me all the way back from when Studio Sera started, from when Homestead started. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So the origin story.
Yeah, pretty much.
So we started Studio Sera in 2017, and that really came from a place where we wanted to create spaces that aren't just functional, but they're also meaningful and poetic. We wanted spaces that sort of speak to this modern new Pakistan, or a new Pakistani aesthetic that can be developed, and not aping from the West or other places, but trying to come up with or investigate our own identity.
Fatma, you came in when?
I came in when Studio Sera started, so okay. I kind of just followed Sahar, and I saw a project of hers that she had done, and I had to figure out who the architect was, and I stalked the person, found the architect, committed to it, that this is the only person I need to work with.
I remember you saying that, I feel like I've worked in different things before this, but this is the aesthetic that I want to go for. Like, this is what appealed to you.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And actually, before that, I worked at a really large firm, which I think when you're a young architect and you graduate, you feel like you should go for that old, biggest firm in the country. And I personally felt like I got lost there. And then this project came up, something open in Karachi. It looked beautiful. I fell in love with it, had to find the architect, did my stalking, led me to you. And that's our origins love story, I suppose you could say.
Right. And from the projects that because I've seen a bunch of your projects because by default, just being in this orbit. But from your projects that you've worked on, you guys have worked on everything, right? From commercial to even like people's personal homes. Which ones do you kind of like lean towards? Which ones do you actually really enjoy working on?
Well, it's interesting actually because we started out, like Fatma said, working on more commercial projects. So
you have to pay the bills, right?
Yeah. But like restaurants, actually, spaces that were seen by a lot of people.
Right.
So that was Muse, Coach Roti, Loco, and a few others. And initially, about 80% of our work was commercial, in the sense that it was this type of retail or boutiques or restaurants, hospitality projects. And then seeing that, people started coming in and wanting their houses designed as well. And they liked what they saw in the restaurants.
Right.
And that's how the home started.
And interestingly, they wanted their homes to look like those restaurants as well. They found that, I feel like a lot of people use those as references to come in. And even when we started doing some office spaces, again, the reference was always the restaurant that they saw and said, we'd love our office to look like that. And I think the reason behind that is not because our restaurant looks like such an amazing restaurant, it's because the restaurants feel like home and have an almost effortless presence to them.
Right.
And people want that same feeling to come through in their homes.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the design aspects of it, because your design kind of stands out. For lack of better words, that minimalism, but also you bring that homeliness to it. So it's kind of like a difficult balance, right? To be minimalistic and then still make it homey or whatever. So for each project, you guys choose a design according to the person, according to the brief, or how much of it is your own input as well? Because you have your own, it's a very strong design aesthetic that you guys have.
So I think when we it also comes down to the client a little bit, and also about what the project is. So when it's been a restaurant, a number of things dictate what the space could look like. Whether it's the person who owns it and their personality, and whether we want that to come through, whether it's the food and the kind of genre of restaurant that they're opening, and that has to connect to the space. So I think those factors apply, and also sometimes we just get a feeling straight on about what this should look like at the end, and we have to then reverse engineer ourselves and come up with the concept, which happens pretty naturally and organically in a conversation. But it is almost like we get the project, we can see the end, and then we kind of work our way backwards.
Actually, she's right. So it is very much from a feeling. It starts with a feeling, which is interesting. And then, yes, like we are minimal, but at the same time, we try to imbue soul into a project. So while it's sort of empty, it's not devoid of emotion or feeling.
So for me, it's very like, because I not that creative, for me it's like I walk into a room, and if it's a blank bare space and I'm looking at it, it takes me a very long time to even feel anything, because it's a blank bare space, and in most cases you go into like places where it's a blank bare space that looks terrible because it's all broken up. And so for me to feel anything, I don't know how you guys get there.
But I think it is some kind of intuition or gut feeling as well, that you enter a space like this office. When Seher saw it, it was a derelict building. So
that's what I'm saying in my head. So that's what I envision when you walk into like.
So what you're describing, that it was broken and didn't look good.
It looked like a meth lab. Really.
Yeah, it looked like
chicken running around.
Yeah, it looked like war had broken out here, but it was amazing, and that it was love at first sight. And then obviously now it looks like this.
Yeah.
But if we show you the befores, it's literally there's smears of green paint on it.
Yeah. And animal droppings, and like nobody had lived here or worked here for 6 years.
That's what I'm saying. How do you, and if you look at the space now, and you guys will probably see, because we're going to do a little walkthrough as well, how do you go from that? Like from the minute you walk in and you see the space, how do you find the beauty in, and envision all of this eventually to make it like this?
I think it's interesting that these locations also have, they have something already. You kind of tap into the spirit of the place, whether it's covered in literal dirt or not. But it's often easier for us to connect with something that has a little bit of a history or a story there. Like before we found this location, we looked at a lot of places in Bukhari, like the new builds, and they always felt a little, almost too modern, too devoid of anything. And it was that problem that you enter and you kind of go blank.
Right.
But this derelict-looking meth lab really called out.
It had a
to
story.
us.
It was one of those moments where even if the walls could talk.
Right.
And when you're talking about how some spaces feel bare, and how do you kind of, when you were describing our aesthetic about being minimal, but it's not without emotion, that's, I think, what we're always striving for. And when you're describing some of the modern spaces that we didn't like, ergo, example, some of the Bukhari buildings, it's because they are modern, but they've missed the memo on having any kind of soul or intention behind it.
Right.
And that's actually the problem overall with overbuilding right now, right? You're just kind of going, and no one's really thinking twice about what's happening next to you, what's the context. Am I staring into my neighbor's home or anything like that? So
I'm glad you bring that up, because that's something that, I mean, it's not in my notes, but I would love to talk about. The planning around things. I feel like we've kind of because everyone's working in silos everywhere, maybe, or maybe they're just, I mean, it's just this struggle to build.
Yeah.
There's no planning involved.
There isn't.
There's no thinking behind, even if it's a house, for example, I need a green belt in front, or I want some sort of, people just put up a wall and they're like, okay, now we're here with their bags and let's live. So how do you go about, like, if, for example, you have clients who come to you for that and they're like, we need a house in like 3 months, get it done. How do you go about that?
Well, I mean, those are two different things, right? In the sense that there's unrealistic expectations, which now we actually have to be, it's better to be straightforward at the start.
The reason I'm asking this is because, I mean, you have your own place here, right? It's your very own, I would call it an organization, because you have lots of other employees upstairs as well. But like, you have a very strong voice. You have a very strong image that you put out with your projects and stuff. So with each project, not just a house, it could be any project. How is it, what that balance between you guys getting your way and them getting their way, and how do you strike that balance? Because a lot of people struggle.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's why this new build is so, because everyone's like, okay, I need the money. I'll do
Right.
whatever you want here.
Yeah, it's that tear.
It's that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes the process is fairly seamless. I would say we've had quite a few clients where it's been a click and we've really enjoyed working with each other, and then we work with each other again and again, and it becomes, I mean, I crack this joke with them, especially the start of a residential project, that basically you're married to me right now. And because you are going to be married to your architects, you're with them for at least 2.5 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to have some friction at some point, just like you would with your partners. And that's fine. We'll also make up, and we'll keep going forward
Yeah.
as well. So to kind of combat that, you have to, communication is key. And I think mutual respect is also important. You have to hear out the client, and in turn they have to hear us out as well, and trust that you've hired us as the experts. It's like if I have to fight a case, then I'll hire a lawyer and I will listen to their advice and
Right.
how to fight this and what's the best approach. And it conversely works the same way with your architects or your doctors. You're not going to sit and question them on everything. Having said that, people question us on everything.
I was just going to say, how many times has that happened? Because
Every day, twice a day, twice an hour.
because everyone becomes an expert, right?
Yeah.
If they're working on their own projects, and they will Google something and become an
Yeah.
expert
Right.
at it.
But what the fun projects are the ones where the client is involved, but it becomes sort of a conversation or a collaboration,
Right.
as opposed to copy this from Pinterest, which we just can't do, or somebody else's project, even nothing.
Because it's a combo of passions,
Right.
essentially.
When you
And-
were talking earlier as well, sorry, when you were saying something about how clients come in with, make this for us or something, and how do we kind of bring our design into it. And when I was talking about personality, the important thing of designing houses is not so much that, yes, you saw this example on Pinterest or you like the Palace of Versailles. Congratulations, who doesn't? But it's more about getting to know them and what makes them tick and what are things that they like. So if it's a residence, we actually have this questionnaire now, so it's almost like a dating form where you're asking questions such as, what's your morning routine like? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person?
So you tap into the psyche.
Yeah, do you work
of-
out at home? Do you want to have a space to do that? Are you social? Do you entertain a lot? So
Wow.
those are the questions to ask to actually dictate how this design will come
Yeah.
up in a collaboration.
Because it is about how people live in their spaces. So
Right.
you have to know their routines and their family lifestyle. And
Design is personality.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, essentially. And let's jump a little forward to Homestead. Finally saying it correctly. She keeps telling me off for it. So from architecture and design, and designing also interiors, essentially, you guys kind of moved into, I'm assuming this is new.
Yeah.
This is all brand new.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys kind of moved into also furniture design. I feel like this is very natural. The marrying of the two is very important, because if you're designing a home and you're designing a space, it's only natural that you guys, being the experts, should also be the ones to suggest that, look, this piece should go here, and then you design your own piece
Yeah.
and then place it
Yeah.
there, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
That's exactly, that is how it happened, in the sense that when we started doing homes, we didn't find furniture that seemed to fit into our space. Not fit physically, but
Yeah, I get it.
they
Yeah.
didn't work with our designs, because, like you said, we are sort of somewhat minimal. We are design first, and it's then putting in like a Chesterfield sofa doesn't really work in our
Yeah.
spaces. So it was a natural progression into that.
Mhm.
And then we're also very detail oriented, so we became sort of obsessive about furniture. And the two have to be seamless, and there's a relationship between them. And now we're actually moving further into what we are calling Sera Objects, which might become like the design of lights, the things that are part of our world
Right.
that we want to now focus on and develop as collectible items.
Right. So Studio Sera universe, essentially.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Merchandise coming soon.
Stay tuned. So because I've known you, and now they will also know you, because you guys speak so passionately about your projects, there's so much heart that goes into it. I'm sure there's heart that goes into the products that you're also putting
Yeah.
out, right?
Oh,
there's a
God.
story behind each
Yeah,
one.
and
There's
therefore-
a
Hard
reason.
sweat and tears.
And
Yeah.
therefore an
Because-
equal amount of heartbreak.
Why?
Yeah.
It's a struggle to kind of because you envision so much and you have to design it, you can see the end goal, but getting to the end goal is not as simple as point A to point B.
Of course.
There's so many various factors.
Everything in life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's the struggle is always with the quality, and because we're obsessive, if it's not the best, then we can't accept it, and we certainly can't sell it to you then.
Right.
And that's not just for Homestead. That's a problem or a challenge for Sera that we have to embrace as well. How to make sure that everything we design is turns out the way we're imagining it.
We're control freaks,
Yeah.
basically.
Basically.
You call it control freak, I say passionate.
Yeah.
You could, it's how you look at it,
Yeah.
right? And also meticulous
Yeah.
and being very, because you want that product that you put your heart and soul into to be perfect, and for someone else to love it the same way that you love it, essentially. That said, which of these pieces do you love the most? And tell me, actually, no, pick a piece that you guys have put together recently and give me a little story behind it. Like, what is the like that love story of that piece?
I'm going to say Bonnie is my favorite.
Okay.
Oh my God, you're naming your pieces also. I love it.
Oh, naming is a whole other
Yeah.
design process that happens. This piece is called Bonnie, and her brother is called Clyde,
Okay.
because he's chunkier and Bonnie and
Why
Clyde.
not?
Yeah, and they're part of a collection that's called After Hours, which revolves around, as the name suggests, kind of a clandestine mood, a little bit on the darker, moodier side, and a little bit sexier than the first collection. I don't know whether I'm allowed to say the word sexier, but I've already said it now.
It's happening.
Said it twice.
Yeah, now I've said it. Whatever. But Bonnie's my favorite because, so with After Hours, we're looking at a lot of references of the 70s and 80s of the disco era, where a lot of shiny disco balls came into play as well. And Bonnie, when it was initially designed, she's a foyer table with a kind of organic looking legs, and the materiality initially was undecided. I would say we didn't commit to anything, and it was actually on a trip to the workshop. It was just you and I when we suggested that perhaps we should clad the whole thing in mirror. And as you know, that you've described us as very minimal, so After Hours is actually our version of going extra and as maximalist as we could push ourselves, which still in the grand scheme of things is not very over the top or not very
Still
I'm
pretty
just gonna
precise.
say- I was just going to
It's
say,
controlled.
I've seen like other stuff out there.
yeah.
Truck
Our-
art.
Yeah.
That needs to go.
Yeah.
Just
Hey.
let's all
It's
retire.
great on trucks.
It's made for trucks, theek hai.
Yeah, let it stay on drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't need
That's
a
true.
cafe that
I love
has it
it on
vomited
trucks.
over all the walls.
Fair, okay.
But Bonnie's my favorite because of that whole, we clad it in mirror, it was one conversation, we trusted ourselves, the whole thing got done. It was a bit of a struggle to get to the exact way of doing it because you have to cut the mirror into really fine, precise pieces. And the last touch of it is that it's not a pure colored mirror, it's tinted, it's champagne hued. And the way the light hits it then, it kind of refracts light and bounces off it just like a shiny disco ball would do.
Yeah, it dances. In a
Yeah.
way.
I love it.
Yeah, and that's why, that's my favorite
What-
baby.
That literally is your love story to
Yeah.
this product, and for anyone else who's going to be out there buying it, a story should go along with every
Yeah.
little piece, right? While you were talking about After Hours, I was thinking that not a lot of people actually spend so much time and effort in putting together sort of different, I'm trying to say, versions of what their work is. Like a lot of people go through life and they're just like, okay, fine, I'm an architect, so I'm just going to do what I have to do, build this, do that, da 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 da. You guys have taken your space, you guys have taken your products, and you've also added campaigns to it. Essentially, I'm brand perspective.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Right.
Essentially, it's a campaign.
Yeah.
It is, and it was shot like that. There was a whole storyboard made for it,
Right.
and there was a lot of concepts and mood boards and a lot of conversation
So
and
there's a lot of time and effort that's going into all of this, and a lot of people out there who will just probably see the video won't really know the story
Yeah.
behind it.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
tell them a little bit about the campaign, essentially, of After Hours, because we're talking about
Yeah.
it. You've
Yeah.
mentioned it, but like, why?
Well, I think it starts sort of from the collection, and the collection does have we come up with a concept or a theme for it, so it can change. It lets us be sort of fluid in coming up with. It's not all one particular style,
Right.
and we're coming up with an idea. And when we apply a concept to it, we can judge each piece based on whether it meets the mark of what we had set out to do. So After Hours was about, again, a mood or a feeling.
Right.
And then the pieces became almost like characters within that narrative.
Hence the names.
Yeah. And hence the idea behind the campaign that we shot for it as well. The first idea was actually, the concept was that it's all these furniture pieces at a gathering. And it's an evening, it's a night out for them. And that's how that video was shot as well.
Lovely, lovely. So that's exactly what I wanted them to know. Like, I know, I've talked to you about it, but I want them to really, really know. Let's go. I want to talk a little bit also about the kind of materials that you guys use. Because while you were talking, because not an architect, not an expert at anything to do with products or design or anything, but one of my favorite pastimes is I sit and watch home renovation videos. And so every time I hear the word cladding, I get really excited because I know what it is. So while you were saying all of these words, I was just getting very excited. The materials, like mixed materials, mixing different things together to put a product together, how much experimentation goes into it?
A lot, actually. Like, materials is our jam.
Okay.
But we also are very particular to use Pakistani local materials.
And sustainable?
Sustainable.
Yeah.
And yes, it should be from here. So while, again, it's not, the collection you might see looks very different and somewhat modern, but it does actually stem from that same ethos of creating this modern Pakistani aesthetic.
Right.
Um,
Like all those pieces you've got upstairs displayed.
Yeah.
Like, every time I come, I'm like, what's this stone? What's this
Right.
stone? All of those stones come from here, essentially.
Yeah, as much as possible. The furniture for Homestead is all locally sourced stone and locally sourced wood. We take a lot of pride. So everything that you're talking about upstairs, the way those materials are, we take a lot of pride in that and making sure that we're experimenting on A, what the material is, and B, the kind of treatment we apply to it. So whether it's just kind of, it can be one stone and we can use it in 4 different ways. It can feel different. The way the light hits it will be different as well.
Right.
So it's always interesting to reinvent that, actually.
So this is what this is. Like, I want everyone out there to also kind of step into your space and kind of see the detailing and the work that goes behind the scenes, because they see the finished product. I came to your launch and I saw that big dining table. I fell in love with it. And I couldn't understand how this one giant piece, like how they cut it, I was very fascinated by that, but I don't have the words, I don't have the explanations, but for people to understand the things that go in the behind the scenes of the making of, that's fascinating also.
It's true, the process or how it comes together. And you're right, like that is such an important part of the story. Because I almost hesitate to call it furniture. It's actually these designed objects that we live with, or sculptures almost, that we want to put in.
Essentially, it's art. People treat it like it isn't, but it is art, because there is some mason out there who put 2-3 things together, carved it out and put it together. So
and that's actually the shift we want to encourage, that thinking that it is art, it is something you can pass down, it's a collectible. So when we're talking about Sera Objects as well, it's not that, you buy Bonnie today and you'll get to enjoy it, but really she can be passed on for generations. It is timeless. You don't have to think of it as, this is a sofa that I'm sitting on today and how do I justify spending this much money to buy it? Because you would easily justify that money if you were buying jewelry or even clothes for that matter.
Right.
But these are actual heirlooms you can pass down.
Let's talk a little bit about the craftsmanship that goes behind the making of some of your, like, for example, Bonnie, since we're talking about Bonnie. Tell me how it all came together.
So one of my favorite pieces is a bar cabinet that is called Midas. And it's sort of inspired by a tree, or the bark of a tree, or a sculpture that resembles this monolithic, almost mountain-like object. And when we started designing the sketch of it, it was this amorphic sort of shape that opens out into storage and cabinetry and built-in lights. But what was really important about the production of it was that because of its shape, every single piece of wood had to be, it was sort of carved together and sliced together, and it had its own undulations. So we numbered every single, I think there were 300 pieces of wood that created that shape, and they were all actually recycled wood. So we got old shisham, shaped it down, pieced it all together. It took 4 months to make this one cabinet.
Wow.
But when you see it, it sort of stays with you. It's a little bit haunting because it's not a cabinet, it's not storage, it's not a bar even. It's
Right.
more like a art object that can be placed anywhere. It's discreet, and it's also commanding of a sort of presence.
And before I even got to the workshop, it took many rounds of iterations in the studio first, whether that was a sketch or even when it was being modeled, I remember the shape. And even though it's just organic, but despite that, it takes really long to make sure that that one curve is doing the right kind of curving.
Right.
And then with the wood, is actually really interesting because when we were designing it, it was a color. This it was supposed to be red, it was supposed to be black, it was supposed to be blue, it was supposed to be some high gloss thing. But when the wood came together, it looked so beautiful on its own. It didn't need a treatment after that. That was it.
I think that's what it is with a lot of materials, natural materials. When you use those natural materials, you don't often need to add anything else to
Right.
it because they're beautiful in their raw form,
Yeah.
Exactly.
essentially.
And actually, our craftsmen in Pakistan are so talented. And they've always made a certain type of furniture. So if you go and you'll see them carving away at something, their workmanship is so, especially in the Punjab side, it's tremendous. Like
Right.
nobody does that anymore. But we don't necessarily do a lot of carving in our design. But having that workmanship come into a more modern or a sleeker sort of element, it still requires perhaps even more precision and a finer hand to get it to be exactly right.
Are there things that you guys have learned from those craftsmen?
Absolutely.
That you've taken away
all
from?
the time.
Yeah.
It's such a collaboration or such a learning.
I think that's also what keeps you going, right?
Yeah.
Because you're constantly learning new things.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they're always also one call away. I feel like even when we're designing things, sometimes we just call those guys and be like, we're thinking of this. How does that make sense to you? Does it work? And I think that's also interesting. It's also really, it's been a huge learning curve for us, but I think even for young designers, that's something they should lean into and embrace. That learn from everybody around you. Don't just look to the next architect. Learn from the craftsmen themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, I've learned everything that, I kind of not even, still not an expert, but I've learned everything from these guys behind the cameras that you
Yeah.
guys can't see just yet. Another thing that I think the younger generation now is kind of leaning more towards is that whole being a little bit more conscious about the materials that they're using for the climate, for the spaces that they're designing, and using sustainable materials and that are slightly more long lasting. I know you guys do like really put a lot of weight into that. So give me a little bit more insight into your sustainability.
Well, I mean, for us, sustainability isn't, it's a way of thinking.
Right.
Right, so whether it's using local materials, recycled materials, also for our architecture, how we plan the orientation of a building, using nature or wind or light or all the elements to work in our favor, building as per our climate. We're not doing glass boxes in Karachi's weather. We're actually having smaller openings, we're framing views, we're planting trees, we're doing things that make it all feel contextual as well as sustainable. So using local materials, local craft, local elements, right? So it's not just about solar panels laga diya, haan bilkul lagaएं. It's a great and I think the only way to do it now.
Right.
But everything else actually has to go together with it.
Generally with the climate changing and with our weather constantly changing, designing spaces, designing even products and stuff, because they also tend to be affected by your surroundings, by your environment. Are you guys doing a lot of research into like getting into figuring out how to build those sustainable products and build those sustainable spaces?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
To be
I feel like I'm
honest.
talking a lot.
No, I think to what Sarah said as well, that it is about sustainability isn't just about what people traditionally think it is, that okay, you can cut costs and go green, and that literally means going green. I think a lot of people have that misinterpretation of it. It is important to respond to context and climate, and we live in Pakistan, so as Sarah said, that you can't be living in literal glass houses. It doesn't make sense. You're just going to up your cost of cooling it. You're going to constantly be fighting the elements. So instead of fighting them, you need to embrace where we live and design around that.
Right.
We've done a lot of projects in terms of architecture. We've done a lot of projects on the beach.
I was gonna come to that.
And then
My favorite video to constantly keep seeing over and over again. I have yet to go, but Khoj
is Khoj Resorts. So yeah, we just
flex, please. It's amazing. It's a great project.
So we just did a beach resort, as you just said. It's on the coast of Gadani. It's in Balochistan, and even for that, you can't be designing things without looking at where they're going to be placed. You can't be blind to that. So you're not going to sit and propose that let's have all the windows be wood, because then you're going to be polishing them for the rest of your life. You're also not going to propose for a lot of metal to be there because it's going to catch rust. I mean, we live in Karachi. Rust is present in the city itself. Like, forget about going closer to the beach. Like, you're already struggling with it in Clifton, in Defense. So that's how to be sustainable, that you are conscious of where you're living and you design according to that.
Right.
And even when it comes to our furniture, the decisions we make kind of trickle down from the architecture. So when we're using marble or stone, we are using local materials, where that keeps the cost in check as well. If we start using Italian marble for all our furniture, nobody's going to buy anything ever, because the cost of it will just be exorbitant.
Also, about why Italian marble, when we have such great marbles and materials of our own, that we need to give them sort of the due respect, and also just incorporate our own stuff, like be proud of where we're from, where our things are from, and design for our environment, with our stories.
So that's the thing. I think we forget. We jump on trends, and when we do our research, people will always look at examples abroad and look at Pinterest and look at all of these things, when it's not the same materials. Whereas we have excellent resources right here in our country. I remember my grandparents, when they were building their house up north, they used all of the local materials because that's the material that's growing right there. Correct. And it's easy to access. Yeah. And it's just makes sense to just pick it up and use that to build your house, rather than, flying stuff across or whatever. Even if you have the means to do it. But that material it will last you a lot longer. That house stayed up for decades. Yeah. It's as old as I am. It's still there.
Yeah, but we should go to it.
We should.
But sustainability does apply to all of even the cost of how to get that material there. So if you're flying something in, you're already
incurring a triple cost.
For no reason. So, and it's almost like plants. We know what plants are indigenous to the area, so it makes sense to people will always be like, this plant is for here, so we should grow it here. So you just have to apply that same logic to architecture, to interior design, to furniture. That if this is the wood that comes from this area, it will make logical sense to use that wood, because obviously it can withstand the elements and it can be resilient to that area then.
Right.
And having said that, people don't actually do that with plants, but they really should. If the plants are from that area,
plants especially, indigenous.
I think people forget about plants as a whole.
No, they just like to, and I understand, obviously you want it to be green, so you'd want to max out on, let's put this tree here, this plant here, but it'll die, right? And we see that, then we get upset about it. So you respond to what grows in Karachi, and even Karachi, various different spaces. KDA will have different plants that are indigenous to it. Phase 8 has a totally different kind of wildlife and fauna happening. You need to...
Yeah. People need to also do their research. Yeah. They need to themselves. I mean, you guys are the experts, and you can only take them so far.
Actually, maybe we should get some landscape architects on this podcast.
100%, we should.
Because there's so much we can learn from them.
This is what this podcast is all about. Me learning, you guys learning out there, and then me asking silly questions coming up next. What's your one design faux pas? For me, it's like I'll walk into like a space or a kitchen. I'll be like, that does not belong there. Why would you put that there? Why would this be like this? What's the one thing for each of you? Because I know she will have a lot.
Seher will have a lot too, by the way. Just because she speaks less does not mean she does not think.
I mean, it comes with the territory also, right?
Exactly.
You guys can walk into a space, like we've discussed earlier. You guys can walk into a space and you can pick up on the psyche of the human living or in that space. You can tell instantly, because the way they design their spaces also speaks to their character, their personality. So what's the one thing that they get wrong that irks you?
Oh, so much.
So much.
Must be really hard to go to people's places and
it's
then
terrible.
keep it in.
Not just people's places, but even in the city.
Yeah.
Like it's
God, must be a
driving
daily
down.
struggle.
It is difficult to keep it in, and it's always really amusing to watch Seher's expression.
I can't.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest pet peeve would be just this unnecessary use of diagonal lines that aren't doing anything. You see it on the architecture sometimes, you see it interior-wise. It's just kind of... It's not just about the fact that it's diagonal, it's just about having
Extra lines.
extra geometry. You know, when it's not really... I feel like it takes away so much from the space. It makes it shorter, it makes it awkward. I think any awkward angle, if I were to sum it up, that's the...
Okay.
Or extra use of awkward angles.
That's a good one.
I'm rating it pretty high.
Yeah. I think what I would, just to really take it up, express how deeply I don't like something, is this idea of this, what we in the office call it generic modern. So it kind of looks like it could be from anywhere. It has the same sort of Pinteresty, the lighting, these oversized fake marble walls.
Yeah.
And because everybody thinks it feels posh or rich or luxurious, whereas it just feels so flat and has no story. I can't.
I agree with you. Because it's almost become a trend now.
It's just
where it's like copy pasted off one of those magazines
Yeah.
and just thrown onto your
And it doesn't work
space.
for us. And people, like, in their own lives don't know how to fill up those little niches with
Right.
terrible stuff. So I think one of the things that I would say to younger designers or people who are just looking to get into this field is really that's the most important thing, that you cannot go to Pinterest, copy paste stuff. You have to, like, we're not anymore we're looking now at a slow design. So it is about bringing in a slowness, a timelessness, a permanence into design and into the spaces we create. And that's actually another form of sustainability. So it's not this fast fashion idea.
My favorite term, quiet luxury.
Quiet luxury, but also
Recently learned it.
it's sustainable.
Absolutely. So that timeless design. I mean, I was going to ask you next what you foresee the next 5 to 10 years, the trends there will be in the design world. But this, I guess, is it.
Yeah. We're not trying to see the trends.
Yeah, you're doing your own.
But just slow it down. Like, really, it is about something that's going to last. We want meaning.
Mm-hmm.
The world wants meaning in the way things are unfolding all over the planet.
Right.
It's not about flashy, loud, meaningless, frivolous design or spaces. We want meaning. We want permanence. We want timelessness. We want...
And hence the storytelling behind each of your projects or each of your pieces. It adds so much more than just something that's material,
Right.
essentially.
It should have purpose. Even when you're designing or drawing, everything you do should be there for a reason and not just be decorative or just for the sake of, or we saw this
Right.
reference. And that's what I kind of meant by the awkward angles as well. I feel like it's just done to, this was looking too straight, so we decided to just do this. But why? And then what?
Functionality is another thing, right? Like a lot of people, there's a common myth that a lot of people say, me included, where because I don't know enough and you guys are here as experts to tell me, people think that, especially with furniture pieces and stuff, the more minimalist it is, the more uncomfortable it will be. But there's a way to go around it, right? There's that you have to make it functional.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys put in a lot of time and effort.
And that's actually especially
That's a
in
challenge.
Pakistan, people want it to be comfortable, but comfortable chahiye.
Yeah.
So how do we
But also the challenge of, like, visually, when they see a product, they're like, oh, ye to bahut minimalist hai. It's going to be uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah. And kiya kya
It's a mindset,
Yeah.
essentially. How do you
Yeah.
break that? How do you explain to them that, sit down, please try it out?
I mean, that's probably why this studio came into existence, so that we could kind of shut that down and be like, come, have a seat. And you're most welcome to. And that's why the studio is open.
This sofa is very comfortable.
Yeah,
Must
it's actually
say.
one of those that's supposed to be more for formal spaces. So it's not meant to be where you lounge out.
Yeah.
But it should still be comfortable.
But you know what, I disagree. I feel like you could also lounge out in it. Like, you could also use this in your fancy lounge.
Right.
When girls come over,
Exactly.
you could.
definitely.
You
Yeah.
totally could.
Yeah.
It's
And
multifunctional.
I think that shift is happening. I do see it a lot more in the clients that we get as well, both for our interior residential projects or generally people who walk in. They've really appreciated what we have actually. And there are a lot of people who you wouldn't think would like this, who have come and immediately fallen in love and asked for, placed an order.
Name and shame.
No, I don't know who they are.
No, I'm joking.
But there are people who come and you're just, it's interesting to see that this is something that more and more people are open to, the idea of moving away from what we thought was kind of traditional to us, which was Victorian furniture or something.
Right.
And it's a misunderstanding, only because there was an era that we did all of that. But you have to find what's actually contextual to this area. And if you look at, your grandparents' old homes, and there was an Art Deco movement in Karachi, and it's amazing.
My favorite thing is the storytelling aspect. You go into people's homes and you see the stories transition, and you see the generations come through those homes, and essentially that's what it is. That's what the pieces kind of speak to. And also the traveling, we all, whenever we travel, we pick up a piece and bring it home or whatever, and each one tells a different story. It's just how you put it together. We don't know. You guys are there to then tell us, put this one with this one, I guess.
And, even with the trends or why we don't believe you need to follow those, is because I'm sure everyone who's watching this or who has been to their grandparents' house will find some piece of furniture that's actually been there for 50 years and is still so usable, so timeless, probably their most loved piece there. So you have to ask yourself, why do you think that's so successful? It's not that it followed a trend that only belonged in the 1950s. It's obviously something that in 2025 is still
timeless.
Yeah. It's withstood that test of time.
And functionality, and the material was solid back then.
Exactly.
Yeah, fair. Where right now we're standing at 2025. There's Studio Sera, there's Homestead. Where are we seeing you in 2030? I know we've touched upon it, sprinkled here and there, where you're building this universe. Where do you want to see that universe go?
I think the aim or the goal really is to, with every part of what we do, is trying to define that modern Pakistani aesthetic.
Right.
And what could that mean? How do we interpret our own stories, and how do we bring that to the forefront and feel comfortable in doing that? And developing our language that works for our culture, for our spaces, for our memories, for how we live. And that's really the project, right? So whether that's a chair, or whether that's a house, or a beach hut, or a resort at the beach, how do we live here? And what are our stories?
That's a really beautiful answer.
You can't follow that up with anything that would sound remotely profound.
Let's not even try.
But generally, where do you see do you still see yourself calling this the best job in the world for you in 2030?
I do. And the thing is that the reason behind it is when even Sarah's talking about kind of setting the movement of Pakistani design, when I think about when I wanted to become an architect when I was 4, and then when I decided, I always was very sure that I wanted to be an architect in Pakistan. It was never about practicing anywhere else in the world. And the reason behind that sounds really funny when you're talking about a 19-year-old kid even thinking this, but I thought that I wanted to change the Pakistani landscape of architecture, which is wildly ambitious. And I feel like over the last 10 years, there are moments where you feel like you're barely making a dent. But I think today where we're standing, after having done a beach resort, after having made several huts on the beach, several restaurants in Karachi, and even when you're driving by and you see those projects, you're getting there.
Definitely. They say, na, thappa.
Yeah.
You can tell from a mile away when it's one of your projects. I can tell, at least. From it's the voice is very clear. The visuals, the everything that comes with it, it's very obvious that it's you guys. So you have a strong design sense that you then bring to each of your projects.
So I think when I remind myself that we've actually done that and it is happening, then yes, in 2030 it still seems like the best job ever. And I think with the addition of furniture, accessories, where Sera Objects is going to go as well.
The evolution?
Yeah, I think it's endless possibilities. And it's not just limited to the world of objects. I think we would love to see something in writing, the idea of kind of recording our history.
Start our conversations.
Yeah. And also influence the generations. We can already see it in some of the younger designers, maybe some of the interns who come here, or even just anyone out there, not just interior designers. I think the shift is there in our clients, in the way they think. A lot of people, I think this is a very small thing, but a lot of people who come to us for residences and are younger, you know, they no longer need drawing rooms, because that idea is archaic in the sense that you don't really need a room that you'll only use once or twice a year at Eid and at a wedding.
Yeah.
So, you know, that shift of being able to understand that we don't need that, that's where this is going. Otherwise, a lot of people, maybe even till recent, there are obviously still people who want drawing rooms, and that's fine. You should keep spaces that you use.
Like my mother, but she does entertain a lot.
But that's the thing, that you term it differently.
Right.
You call it the entertainment room.
Yeah.
You don't call it the drawing room anymore.
Yeah.
Even the concept of the term drawing room. I
And
mean,
it just goes back to how you live. We're
Yeah.
going to ask you those questions, and if we feel like you don't need that space, we're going to say that.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of, that whole thing of making that shift in design and how you use spaces is exciting, and how we want to influence.
Speaking of influencing, because I like to hope that, you know, through these podcasts, we do influence a lot of the young kids out there. Please tell them why your job is the best job in the world, and they should also, you know, maybe strive to working towards something like this. Why should they actually come into the design world? Why should they work towards getting into maybe architecture? And the fact that, like, it's not just, you guys may have started off as architects, but then you kind of branched out and you followed your passions as to wherever that path was leading, and now you're building your own universe, essentially.
Yeah.
That's what it is, right? It's not just you're stuck in one
No.
thing. So there are possibilities out there, and what would you like to say to them about your job?
Well, I think, it is, for me, the only job I can imagine, the many different versions that we've done. The most important thing for junior designers or people getting into the age of deciding things that they want to make or do, I think the most important thing is to find your voice and find the thing that resonates with you, and I think that job will be the most exciting job. And you'll bring to it passion, and not this idea that it's not actually all about money. It's not actually all about, but it is about making things that become a legacy.
Again, that's a really hard answer to
Totally using that for the promo.
Yeah, that's a really... Money is important, let's not lie. But it is important to ask yourself why. Why do you want to do what you are thinking about? Is it just because of the money? Then that's probably not enough of a reason. I mean, recently I was at a career talk at my old school and speaking to these 9th graders. And a lot of the people who came were debating between medicine and architecture, which couldn't be more far apart. But obviously they have interest in that area. And generally I feel like those interests of where you want to be or what you want to do when you're a grown-up form pretty early on in some shape, way, or form.
Right.
Whether it's something that you just like to do, like to watch, like to learn about, or you think that person is cool, or that when that aunt comes over, I find them interesting.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, ask yourself why and do the research. You know, put in some effort to find out what it is you like about that and try it out. I mean, I interned in every office in this city before deciding to commit to becoming an architect and then start working as one as well. And I think it was helpful for me to see what architects are like, how their offices function. And one of the things that I really enjoyed in those internships that I think our office also has is that the studio-like environment where everybody's kind of talking to each other and the conversations happen. And it's
You never know what kind of conversation is going to spark what.
exactly
Right.
So that said, hopefully this conversation will spark a lot of people to kind of get into it and also learn about design, learn about architecture, learn about even Sera's universe.
Thank you for having us.
No, thank you for letting us into your space and invading it terribly.
No,
and
you're always welcome.
And you know I'm your biggest fan. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
We're pretty big fans of you as well.
Thank you.